Alright, so a quick rundown on how I like to break a lamb, or how I like to break a lamb in a shop specifically. So this is obviously shop related rather than in a mobile cool room or even in a farmer's shed. Now keep in mind that when you're breaking a lamb in a shop environment, you've generally got a big enough bandsaw that you can pop the lamb through without having to use a handsaw to take the shoulders or the leg off the lamb, which makes it a whole lot easier and a whole lot faster. Now to kick things off, I mark between the 3rd and 4th rib with my steak knife. You can go between the 4th and 5th rib. That's going to be completely up to the individual shop. But like I said, I like to go between the 3rd and 4th rib before then marking down at the actual legs. So to give you a bit of an up close angle of what I'm doing here, you've marked just down from the armpit there, which is between, like I said, the 3rd and 4th rib. So it's a lot easier to see when you look inside the actual cavity of the lamb. But yeah, 3rd and 4th rib, that's my personal preference, but you can go between the 5th and 6th if you wish. Then when it comes to the legs, there's a few different techniques in how to find the exact right spot, but what you're aiming to do is cut down into the cup and ball joint there of the legs, which will leave the chump on the loin. Alternatively, when you want to take the legs off the lamb, you can do it while it's still hanging. That way you'll take it off through the joint just below the chump, so the chump will still be attached to the legs, and then you'll take it off on the bandsaw later. But you can see here where I've marked it, I can actually pop my knife in and go straight into that ball and cup joint, which means I've hit it right on the money. It's exactly where I need to be. Now, being that this is in a shop setting and I'm using a bigger bandsaw here, I've decided to take the legs and the shoulders off on the bandsaw here rather than take the legs off while it's hanging, so I can physically pick this lamb up and then push it through the bandsaw nice and safely without it hitting or catching on anything. Makes it a whole lot quicker, especially compared to using a handsaw. But don't get me wrong, there are a lot of butchers that will prefer to use a handsaw to knock off the shoulders and knock the legs off rather than popping it through the bandsaw, and that's just going to be completely up to personal preference. For instance, when I'm doing my home butchering in my mobile cool room, the bandsaw that I use is a little Carnivore Collective one, which is a benchtop bandsaw. So that does not have the size or the ability to have a whole shoulder or a whole set of legs put through that saw. So I do need to take the legs and shoulders off with a handsaw, which is more classed as an old school traditional way. So now that I'm done with the shoulder and the legs, they are ready to get hung away in the cool room for a later date, and I need to now process the actual barrel. So what I'm going to do is just pop it straight through the bandsaw here, split it in half directly down in the middle of the spine, making sure that it pops as I go. It makes you know that you're actually in the very center of that spinal cord. Then I can take off each lamb flap from each side. Okay, so the next step after removing both those lamb flaps is just to remove some of this kidney fat and the kidneys. You can keep those kidneys if you've got something to do with them, otherwise throw them out or use them for pet food. And then once that kidney fat's been cleared out, I can see the actual ribs a lot clearer here, and I'll find the last rib, and then I'll go up to the vertebrae and go one more down towards the loin. By doing that, it gives me the ability to go in nice and square, so I've got a nice square cut on my loin, and then before I cut through that rib, I angle it up and allows me to take that off completely. And then it's just a matter of going down to the very last vertebrae before the tailbone, going up one and straight through, and that gives you the separation point between your chump and your loin. Then once that's done, it's time to remove the chine bone. So you can see that I held that rack up on its end, and I'm aiming just to go down the very base of the ribs to remove that spine bone or take the chine off. And then it's just a matter of rinse and repeat with the other side of the barrel. So you can see here, a nice square line is where I'm going to be going. You want to give enough length on those ribs that you can cut cutlets, or you can even do it as a whole rack. Now, depending on the scenario, whether it's the shop or even a cut list of a customer, you're going to either keep that kidney fat to add into sausages or throw it in the bin and not need it at all. And the same goes for the kidneys. If no one wants the kidneys, no one's got an order for them, then they'll get discarded and thrown out as well. To give you a bit of a close-up angle of what I was talking about before, you can see here I've got that last rib, I've gone down to the vertebrae and then gone down one towards the loin and marked it. So that gives you a nice clear indication of where that vertebrae is, and you're going to get a nice straight cut when you pop it through the bandsaw. The same thing goes here for the chump. You can see that's the tailbone vertebrae, and then you go one back. And that's it. That's a basic rundown of what I'm going to do in a shop. I can now put the chumps, the loins, the racks, and even the legs and shoulders away to be used later on.